Hello my dear mates. This is a painting I created using a very simple underpainting technique. The underpainting for this piece was so easy that literally anyone can do it. I painted this piece about 3 years ago. I was walking by a freshly mowed field when the setting sun suddenly broke through the cloudy sky. The contrast between the grey blue sky and the bright yellow cut hay caught my eye immediately. You don't see light like that every day, so I rushed to grab my brushes and did a quick color study along with snapping a few photos. Later I painted the entire scene in my studio, and the best part, I recorded the whole process for you. Do you want to know how I created this simple underpainting? And you want to know more about landscape painting? Let's watch this video. Sure, I could skip the underpainting and go straight to the colors, but where's the fun in that? I wanted the burnt umber tones to peek through here and there, adding depth and richness to the overall color scheme. There are two main ways to approach an underpainting, and let me tell you about my favorite. First, I create a detailed drawing and transfer it onto the canvas. Then the real fun begins. I start adding those intricate details and tweaking the tonal values of my subjects. I build up the painting in layers, each one more refined than the last, until the underpainting is a masterpiece in itself. Method number 2 takes a different turn. It's a super simplified version of underpainting that's way more abstract and rough around the edges. Check it out, I've drawn directly onto the panel with charcoal. The painting surface here is an ACM panel with a thin coat of acrylic paint. For this first layer, known as the imprimatura, I mixed yellow ochre with a touch of black. My drawing style here is all about simplicity, using mainly straight lines to carve out the basic structure of the painting. This straightforward sketch will be my roadmap as I dive into the colors. When it comes to underpainting, burnt umber is my go-to. This fast-drying color is perfect for thin layers. I thin it with just turpentine. More thinner means more transparency and lighter shades on the canvas. Underpainting is a bit different from the usual oil painting technique. It's more like working with watercolor. I paint with speed and energy, using larger brushes to cover big areas quickly. Traditional bristle brushes are my main tools, but I switch to finer synthetic or natural brushes for the finishing touches. The hills in the background have a lighter value than the plain of trees, further in the foreground. Also, the contrast of details is much lower in the background, and the hills are essentially made up of a single value. And since this is just a rough underpainting, it doesn't mean I will stick rigidly to this value, and ultimately the other values in the composition in the next layer of paint. This is another key difference from the first method. There, if I define that a place has a specific lightness or darkness, I repeat that in the color layer. So, if a spot has a value of 10 in the underpainting, the color I apply to that spot has the same tonal value. Here, on the other hand, I'm once again deviating from the classic approach and adjusting everything as I go. The purpose of the simplified underpainting is just to lay down values in the lower layer, which I then model and adjust as need. After a week of drying, the underpainting is ready, and it's time to dive into the vibrant world of colors. At this point, there's not much room to tweak the drawing, so I grab my flat brush and start applying color, closely following the contours of the underpainting. This is where the magic of the earlier layer shines through. The underpainting guides me, and since the drawing is already nailed down, I can zero in on the colors and really bring the piece to life. Next up is the sky. I went for a bit of spontaneity here, skipping the underpainting and diving straight in. My goal? A moody, gray-blue sky. I even made the mountains in the background a bit bluer than they actually are, just to keep that vivid contrast alive. I kept imagining the dazzling yellow field in front of me. Thanks to the brilliant clash between blue and yellow, that yellow really pops. At this stage, precision wasn't my main focus. I was all about capturing that perfect color, intensity, and richness. Up next, I'll tackle the trees and bushes on the right. Watch as I lay down the base colors, sculpt the shapes, and finish with the fine details. In this early phase, my focus is all about nailing the colors perfectly. With the colors set, I can quickly evaluate if they align with my vision and tweak them as needed. Check out the colors in the photo of the scene I'm painting and compare them to the final artwork. When you're painting from a photo, remember that the colors in the photo aren't vibrant or warm enough. You need to bring that extra punch of color into your painting. You have to interpret reality by using your color theory skills. I'm always thinking about temperature changes, and a warm underpainting with umber works perfectly for this. The sunlight hitting the bush from the right has a warm, yellowish glow, turning the green on the lit part of the bush into a vibrant yellow-green. The part of the bush in half shadow is cooled by the gray-blue color of the sky, giving the green a bluish tint. The part of the bush in full shade, however, remains warm due to reflected light and light passing through the bush. I use the umber tone and paint the shadow with a translucent color. The visible underpainting warms the shadow, and the way it shines through adds depth. Another important aspect is the shadow cast by the bush or a tree. You can't paint a cast shadow with just one color. You've got to switch up the color and temperature of the shadow based on how far it is from the bush or tree. The furthest part of the shadow, which is also the lightest, has this cool bluish tint because it's lit by the blue-gray sky. As the shadow gets closer to the bush, it picks up warmer tones. This is basically how the temperature of the shadow works. And don't forget, the ground under the bush has its own local colors, from dry yellow grass to lush, vibrant green grass. In the end, the shadow's color is a mix of different temperatures and hues that you can figure out with a bit of logic and keen observation. Back at the bushes on the right side, I follow the same method as before with the larger bush in the foreground. Using a bigger brush, I apply essentially just 3 colors. One for the shadow, another for the mid-tone, and a third for the highlighted areas. Then with a smaller brush, I add details and expand the color range with more shades. I also have a sky color mixed in case I need to open up the bush and suggest holes through the foliage. For the next tree, I paint it very simply and change its color to a more reddish hue. I always strive for color variety to avoid a monotonous look. At the same time, I thin the paint so I don't cover the underpainting. Visible brush strokes, along with the underpainting, create a more interesting texture for the bush. And we're almost there, my mates. Just a few more finishing touches and I'm done. And that's a wrap for today, my friends. If you enjoyed the video, head over to my Patreon for an extended version where you can find even more details and a ton of additional tips on landscape painting. Plus, you'll get access to more videos, tutorials, and photos where I break down the painting process, layering techniques, and much more. The link to my Patreon is in the video description. If you like my artwork and want to get prints, stickers, and much more of my stuff, check out my website at matemerch.com. Don't forget to use the discount code M8SALE at checkout to get 10% off your entire purchase. For more updates, you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Take care, friends, and see you in the next video.